Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me on Facebook in the Sorcerers Guild. Today on Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 1, we are going to be discussing the essay entitled Creating a Link to Your Spellwork. Now I go over this quite well in the essay itself, and I will leave a link to that essay in the description of this video for those of you who have not yet had a chance to purchase a copy of the Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 1. I will also leave a link of where to purchase a copy of that in the same description. Okay, so for the shorthand then, a link needs to be created anytime you are casting a spell on another person, place, or thing, and you are not going to be delivering the spell to them as an item or using some other means of them contacting the object to create the link. Well, obviously you still need a link, but that's a little bit different when you are going to be giving someone an enchanted object or putting powder across their doorstep. Things like that. It's a little bit different because you are not looking for a sample. So let's talk about the types of samples. The first and most well-known is your classic trope of the lock of hair, fingernail clippings, things like that. These work off of sympathetic magic of the idea of like attracts like. So pictures work on this as well, but we'll get to that in a moment because they're a little bit different. These ideas of actual DNA samples have a very direct link to the target, and they work on something beyond the concept of like attracts like, but I'll actually get into the idea of quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement, of course, is the idea in quantum physics that once two molecules have been linked, if you separate them, what you do to one molecule affects the other because they are quantumly entangled. Well, the same that is true in a lab of hydrogen molecules is also true of hair molecules that are connected to you, or fingernail clipping molecules. Once they've been removed, clipped, and pulled away, they're still quantumly entangled to you. Therefore, what is done to the fingernail clipping affects the molecules within you, and therefore affects you. Okay, so this is a very useful, very direct link when you are using very direct physical magics like war water, bottle spells, stuff like that. If you can get a physical DNA link in those types of spells, it will greatly increase your potency. Of course, if you can't get those, there are other options. Okay, so beyond physical pieces of the person, what do we have? We have, of course, pieces of clothing. You can get cigarette butts. They actually have the DNA on there. Those can be quite potent. If you have a cigarette butt or a popsicle stick, anything like that that the person has been done with, has used and thrown away, got their saliva on it, there you go. Okay, but let's talk about some other common tropes. Photograph. Photograph is great, but photograph isn't quantum entanglement. It's still like versus like attracts like, because it is a copy of your form. And when you create a copy of someone's form, you can use that copy to affect their actual form. So when you are using a picture, you are using the like attracts like, and it is through their form. Now, our form changes often throughout the day. So as I say in the essay, if you have a picture of someone that is in a good mood, or of them when they are in a good mood, the link is going to be more positive, more easily grasped. It's not going to be as abrasive to them, and they are more likely to unconsciously just accept it. This, of course, is assuming that that the target is unaware, because if the target is aware, well, if they're willing, it makes it quite easy. Okay, so if the person is angry, they're going to be a little more closed off when that picture was taken. It'll be a little bit harder to form a link through it, unless, of course, you are trying to use the momentum of making them angry. If you can find a person, and if you can find a picture of the person in the state you want to create, so much the better. Okay, so we can also use handwriting. Someone is creating a verbal form of themselves when they do their signature. Signature is great for a link, and it is especially great to use in spells involving law or courts or anything of that nature, or getting them to agree to something, because the signature indicates agreement. So it is a great piece for that. If you can get the physical sample and that for a persuasion spell, so much the better. It's good to combine these targets to create a firmer link, and targets. It's good samples. It's good to combine these samples to create a firmer link. And the better you can tailor those samples to the overall aesthetic style of the spell, as we talked about earlier, that is going to make it work more smoothly and more efficiently. Okay, so say you have no physical access to this person. Over the internet, we have a few things. Well, you can download a picture if they haven't used the .com sigil or anything like that. Of course, all of this stuff that we talked about over the internet can be circumvented by the .com sigil, unless you have one yourself and maybe find a workaround. I'm not saying that the .com sigil is completely invincible. I want you to keep that in mind, but it is quite potent. I have not found a way around it yet. Okay, so back to the idea of creating a link over the internet. So anytime you are interacting with a person, even in the comment sections of a post, you're thinking about each other, you're looking at each other's text, you have created a temporary mental link. You can use this link to cast spells on someone, especially with your intent, form, charge, release. It's much easier to do an intent, form, charge, release with this type of link because they are more temporary. Sigil work works better this way. You're probably not going to be able to create a jar spell off of your interaction with someone on a post. Even in the DMs, in Instant Messenger, you're having a more intimate interaction, and you can probably cast sigils and servitors at them that way, using that kind of link, but it would be difficult to do a intent, form, charge, containment type spell with that type of post. Perhaps you could screenshot the messages and print them out. You might be able to form some more permanent link that way, but for that type of spell, I very much recommend, for that type of link, it's best to have a release rather than containment type spell aimed at the person. Okay, so let's see, what have we gone over? We gone over the hair, we've gone over pictures, we've gone over signatures, internet, eye contact. I talk about that in the post. Now, it's very important when you do the eye contact, well, it's best that you be prepared when you make eye contact and create the first link while you are actually looking at the person. Not later on, oh, we made eye contact. If you're really good at astral projection remote viewing, you might get somewhere to recreate a link that way. But if you're going to use this method of the eye contact, it is best to project yourself forward. The same as I talk about projecting your intent with your voice, you can project your intent with your eyes, with your vision itself, and simply visualize a link coming out of your eyes and into theirs. And this type of link is best for release work, but if you imagine that, and then imagine that you are making just a little mark, tiny sigil of some type to symbolize that interaction, that link, that connection, you can then use that small mark in a larger sigil or servitor later and use that eye connection contact to create a link and launch a sigil or servitor. This can be done as well through skin-on-skin contact, physical contact. Shake someone's hand. You can remember exactly how that handshake felt, especially, like I said, if you are projecting the intent with your hand to form a link. When you do the handshake, you can then later do spell work through it. Okay, so there's the emotional bond. I mentioned that in the essay. If you have an emotional bond with someone, you can actually simply focus on that bond and use that as a link. The only thing is you'll find it very difficult to go against the nature of that bond. Like I say in the essay, you're not going to be able to harm someone you care about and love by creating a link through the emotional bond, because it would be counteractive to the bond and your link would resist your intent. I can't imagine why you'd want to harm someone you actually love, but people are strange. You never know. All I'm saying is that it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to do so with that type of link. Okay. So, I think that pretty much covers it for this episode. If you have any questions that I haven't covered, feel free to mention them in the comments, and I will respond to them. Thank you once again for joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. And don't forget to join us next time, where we will be discussing the essay, well, actually, we'll be discussing an essay titled A Discussion on Love Spells. Okay. Until next time, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tell.